Hello friends, today we are going to study about an evolutionary approach to animal behavior. Animal behavior is a very interesting and very fascinating subject. I hope you will love this section and all the videos under this section of animal behavior. So this is the first video in which we'll study about questions on behavior, differences between proximate and ultimate causes, and answering proximate causes. So the first is questions about behavior. How the questions generate about behavior, how and what we can study. So there was a scientist named John Alcock. On one summer, he was on mountains of Costa Rica. What he did is he borrowed one black light from his friend, and then he hung this black light by a white sheet on the porch of his house. He observed that the UV rays of his black light attracted hundreds of moths every night. Now, one morning, he found a bright yellow moth of genus Automeris. What he observed is when he carefully touched this moth or picked this moth, the moth was very sluggish and did not give any response. But as soon as he poked the moth, what he observed is the moth flipped his wing. And because of this wing flipping, what happened? Its hind wing, which was earlier hidden behind the forewing, was get exposed. So what he did is, because of its ultraviolet light, hundreds of moths he observed every night. But one morning he found a bright yellow moth of genus Automeris. Now what he did is, when he touched that moth very calmly or carefully, the moth gave no response. But when he poked the moth flipped its wing. And because of this wing flipping, the hind wing, which was hidden behind the forewing, got exposed, and he observed that the hind wing was heavily decorated with some color spots looking like as if these are two eyes. As you can see in this second figure, two black spots looking like these are the two eyes of this moth, which was hidden behind this forewing, which you can see in the first image. So now this phenomenon made him to ask few questions. Now these questions are grouped into two categories. One is proximate and other is ultimate. Proximate means all the questions that are how questions are proximate. For example, to flip his wing, how its muscle worked so that it can able to flip his wing. So these are how questions that answers the mechanism. There must be some mechanism in the muscle that helped him to flip his forewing so that hind wing can become visible. So that is the how question, which tells us about the mechanism, that is called proximate causation. Ultimate means that the questions that are why questions. Why questions means its answer will give us evolutionary reasons, like what is the need, what benefit will the moth get if the moth will flip his wing, what is the evolutionary basis of that wing flipping, why the moth flipped his wing, is there any evolutionary reason behind that, that it provides some benefit to the moth? So these are the questions which are why questions are come under ultimate causation. Now, how questions about proximate causes. So these are few questions like how do the moth's muscle make its wing move and what controls those muscle? Is there any nervous system work behind that? How does the moth know when it has been touched? Did the food the moths ate as a caterpillar influence how it behaved as an adult? Did the moth inherit this behavior from his mother or father? So these are the proximate causations. These are the questions that gives us the mechanism. The answer is some mechanism. How do the moth muscle make its wings move? So there must be some mechanism behind that. What controls this? Maybe some neural mechanism is behind this. How does the moth know when it has been touched? That means here also some sensory or neural mechanism comes into play. Did the food the moth ate as a caterpillar influence how it behaved as an adult? So here also some mechanism will come into play. This last question will tell us about the inheritance. The genes has been inherited from mother side or the father side. So all these are some or the other mechanism. So this how questions or these mechanisms are the proximate causation. The questions that gives the answer as a mechanism. If any process is happening, what is the mechanism behind that process? That all comes under the proximate causation. Now, this proximate causation questions are again divided into two categories. One which is related to hereditary and environment. That is the effect of heredity and the environment on some behavior. So that is hereditary and environmental effect on behavior. And the second question is the mechanism behind that behavior. So these are the two sets of questions that arises about proximate causation. That means if somebody is showing any behavior, so what is the hereditary or how the environment affect to have that behavior. And second is the mechanisms due to which the behavior can be generated. So these are the questions about proximate causes. Next is why questions about ultimate causes. Now what can be the questions about ultimate causes? First is what do today's moth gain by wing flipping? Next can be has the behavior changed over evolutionary time? What causes such change? So all these will come under ultimate causes. That means all that question that answer some evolutionary reason behind that behavior will come under the ultimate causes. Evolution, as we all know, evolution means one behavior or one characteristics or one character during the course of evolution will change into some another character. So the characters evolve. Why they evolve? Because for adaptation, for survival. So basically, any characters that evolve, any addition of new character or the deletion of existing character all happen so that an organism can survive in the environment. As we all know, survival of the fittest. So according to the environment, the animals will adapt, and when that adaptation entered into gene level that can be inherited, that's when we say that the organism evolved into new organism. So why these phenomenon happen? For the survival, because the environment are changing. So in the changed environment, because the competitions are more number of individuals, so everybody wants to survive, everybody wants to exist in this nature. So for that, they'll adapt the character, they will evolve into some another species for their survival. So all the questions that answer some evolutionary reason will come under ultimate cause. Now next is answering proximate questions about behavior. In that, we'll study with the example of bee wolves and homing behavior. Now there was one scientist called Tinbergen. He made the study of animal behavior a part of modern biology. He gave the term ethology. Ethology means study of animal behavior. And in 1973, he shared Nobel Prize with other researchers. Now he studied the ultimate and proximate questions about behaviors of many species. So we will study one of his research work. So now Philanthus triangulum. This is a digger wasp, also known as bee wolf. Why bee wolf? Because they capture and paralyze honeybee. Now what Tinbergen observed was, he observed that these beewolf, what they do is they make homes in a sand dunes. So say suppose this is a sand dune, the beewolves they will make homes. For example, suppose in this sand dunes, multiple beewolf homes are there made by multiple beewolves. Now what he observed was these mother beewolf they go somewhere to find their hunt, that is bee, and they bring this bee to their home so that their young ones can feed on them after hatching. So they need this bee to feed their young ones right after hatching. Now Timbergen observed that, say suppose this red one, the bee wolf of this nest went to hunt for a bee. Now when this bee will return, she will directly enter to her house only. ignoring all the other these blue houses. So the Timbergen felt curious about how she can able to recognize her nest, though all the nests are looking the same way. Then how come she be so accurate that she every time lands on her nest only? Why not in some other nest? So from here, the question arises about proximate. Proximate means mechanism. So what can be the question? The question is how these bees are able to recognize their house, or how they able to find their nest or house. What is the mechanism behind that? So this curiosity led Timbergen found the exact reason behind that. What he found was, suppose this is the sand hip having multiple nests and the red one of one particular bee wolf. He observed that when this bee wolf was to leave her nest to hunt for a bee, that bee wolf takes a circular path like a loop, like this, every time looping around the nest and every time increasing the length and the height of this loop, and at some point will leave for the bee hunt. So he thought that definitely they are using some visual clues to remember their nest. So for any scientific research, there should be one hypothesis. So he generated this hypothesis. First, we need a problem. The problem is how they able to remember their nest. So the Timbergen generate the hypothesis that maybe they are using some visual clues to remember their nest. Now next he has to do is need to test his hypothesis. So what he did that he waited for this particular bee wolf to leave her nest. Once the bee wolf left her nest, what he did? He removed all the visual clues, which includes because the house is on the sand hip, there can be big stones, any plant stem, leaves, anything. So whatever he found, the big prominent things around that particular nest, he removed everything. And then again waited for that bee wolf to come back to her nest. Now when the bee wolf returned to her nest, because the visual clues were removed, he observed that the bee wolf took some time to find her nest. Earlier, what he observed was bee wolf was very accurate in finding her nest. She was directly hitting on her nest. But this time he observed that she was roaming here and there, and by some random trial and error basis, she landed on her nest. So it proved that beewolves are using visual clues to remember their nest. To become more sure, he performed one spatial learning mechanism. Spatial learning means you can see in the figure 1 what he did. Around the nest of a particular bee wolf, he placed the pine cone. And when that bee wolf left for her hunting, what he did in the second figure, as you can see, he changed the position of this pine cones from her nest to some far place. And he observed that when that bee wolf returned back after hunting, she landed on wrong nest because the pattern Timbergen created was earlier around her nest, which she used as a visual clue to find her nest. As soon as the clues are placed at another position in the same pattern, she got confused and she landed on a wrong nest. So this proved that the mechanism behind finding the exact nest is using the visual clues. So this is the example of proximal or proximate causation. That means the causation that answers for mechanism behind any behavior. Whatever the behavior is, the mechanism behind that behavior as well as any hereditary or environmental effect on that behavior, all those questions will come under proximate causation. Now, one question from my side for you all, that is, humans have lungs instead of gills. Would you able to frame some proximate and ultimate questions for this statement? Do let me know in the comment section. If you found the video informative, please do like, share and subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon for the next video notification. Till then, stay safe, stay happy.